Hello students, let us learn the third poem of your English textbook today, A Tiger in the Zoo. This poem, A Tiger in the Zoo, is written by Leslie Norris. He was born on 21st May 1921 and died on 6th April 2006. Leslie Norris is a prize-winning Welsh poet and a short story writer. He taught at the academic institutions in Britain and the United States, including Brigham Young University. In this poem, the poet explains the agony and helplessness of a caged tiger that lives in a zoo. Here the poet explains what his life could be, the life of a tiger could be if he had been a free animal. In this poem, the poet has tried to explain about the condition of animals that are caged by human beings for their own fun. He also emphasizes the point that animals should be left in their own natural environment, and he talks about the importance of freedom. Not only animals' freedom, every living creature's freedom. Now let us look at the poem in detail. A tiger in the zoo. He stalks in his vivid stripes, the few steps of his cage, on pads of velvet quiet, in his quiet rage. In this first stanza of the poem, the poet talks about the life of a tiger in the cage of a zoo. Here, the word he refers to the tiger. The poet says that the tiger that is confined in the zoo stalks in the cage or moves around slowly in the cage under his bright colored skin. The tiger is in the cage and it is not in its natural environment. Very quietly, he is taking small steps in his cage. The poet says the tiger can take only a few steps because the cage is too small and it is not easy to move around in the cage. Take a look at this third line of the stanza. There the poet says the tiger walks on pads of velvet quiet. What is this pads of velvet quiet? Pads of velvet quiet is the underside of the tiger's paw. No one can hear his footsteps because he has very soft feet like velvet, because of which there is no sound of the tiger's steps. The tiger is walking in his quiet rage. His rage or anger is quiet or it is silenced. Just like his walking, his rage or his anger is also silenced. The tiger tries to control his anger by quietly walking in the limited area of his cage. He is angry because he is not free, but he doesn't express his anger. He just keeps quiet in the cage. Now let us move on to the second stanza. He should be lurking in shadow, sliding through long grass near the waterhole where plump deer pass. In this second stanza of the poem, the poet expresses his opinion about the tiger. He is of the opinion that if this tiger were free, it would have hidden itself behind the long grass near the water bodies where plump or fat deer used to come to drink water, so that it could easily catch the deer and have it as its food. The tiger would be walking silently in the long grass near the water bodies. When any deer came along that way to drink water, it would pounce upon them. As you know, the tiger is basically found in the places where it can find its prey. Here, the poet wants to say that the actual life of a tiger is to live in the jungles where it could catch its prey and eat that. But since the tiger is in the cage, it cannot do so. Now let us move on to the third stanza. He should be snarling around houses at the jungle's edge, bearing his white fangs, his claws, terrorizing the village. In this third stanza of the poem, the poet imagines about the actions of the tiger if it were a free animal. There might be people living at the edge of the forest. If the tiger were free, he should be snarling around the houses. What is this snarling around? Making horrifying sound for frightening people. The tiger might be going around the houses near the forest and it might be frightening the people living there in that village. Not only by snarling, but by baring or showing his sharp teeth and claws or the nails, he would have been terrorizing or frightening the villagers. What the poet tries to convey here is that the tiger should not be confined to the four walls of its cage in the zoo, but it should be let free to do all what it does as a wild animal. It should be hunting its prey or it should be terrorizing the villagers. It should be allowed to do everything that it could do as a wild animal. Now let us move on to the fourth stanza of the poem. But he is locked in a concrete cell. his strength behind bars, stalking the length of his cage, ignoring visitors. In this fourth stanza of the poem, the poet comes to the reality of the tiger's life in the cage. What is that reality? It is nothing but he is caged, he is confined, his movements are limited, he cannot do what he could, his strength is imprisoned. The poet says that the tiger is confined in a strong cell which is made of strong building materials like concrete, by which the movement of the tiger is limited. How the tiger is imprisoned, so is his ferociousness. The tiger is caged, and so his ferociousness is also behind bars. It is also caged, it is also limited. He just walks to and fro in the cage. He is very well aware that he can't do anything by being in the cage. So he never tries to terrorize or frighten the visitors, the people who come to the zoo to see the animals there in the zoo. He ignores them because his power is restricted by the cage. Now let us move to the last stanza of the poem. He hears the last voice at night, the patrolling cars, and stares with his brilliant eyes at the brilliant stars. In this closing stanza of the poem, the poet clearly portrays the helplessness of the caged tiger. The poet says, at night the tiger hears the sounds of the patrolling cars. Patrolling cars are the vehicles of the police which are used to guard the zoo or the city at night. So at night, the tiger hears the sounds of these cars. Then he stares at the brilliant stars with his brilliant eyes. Here the use of the word brilliant for the tiger's eyes as well as the stars brings out the magnificence of the third line in this stanza. The tiger has dreams of being free in its brilliant or bright eyes. It sees the brilliant stars or the bright stars with his bright eyes. The tiger looks at the stars, thinking how beautiful his life could be outside this zoo. In this last stanza, the poet wants to convey that the tiger is sad because he is confined in the cage that makes him unable to do anything what he wants. Therefore, he looks at the stars in the sky and tries to divert his thoughts towards them. That's all about the poem. Now read the poem well and watch the video again. Then find out the rhyme scheme of the poem. Here is a list of the poetic devices used in the poem. Collect details about these poetic devices and find out examples of these poetic devices from this poem. Thank you for watching.